Welcome back to our study of the book of Numbers. We're in Numbers chapter 33. This video will cover both 33 and 34 as it is a summary of both the journeying of the Israelites out of Egypt to their 41st year right before Moses passes away. And also it's going to record the people who were in charge of each of the 12 tribes right before they go across the Jordan. And it summarizes at this point in 32, land was given to the tribes of Reuben and Gad and half of the tribe of Manasseh, which included the land of Bashan, which was ruled by King Og. Chapter 34 talks about that their conquest has already taken place. So there's a bit of overlap between the book of Numbers and the book of Deuteronomy, and we're going to see it bleed even a little bit into the book of Joshua. The book of Numbers is, of course, written as they're approaching their 41st year. Remember, they spent 1 year at Sinai, and then they were cursed to wander for another 40 years in the wilderness because of their unbelief when the spies came back and brought the report. And then they wandered for 40 years. This is in the 39th year. At the end of the 39th year, Aaron dies on Mount Hor, and now Moses is kind of wrapping things up here. And then Deuteronomy is something that he writes right before they go in. When you read Deuteronomy chapter 1, you look at the way that he presents it. He's like, okay, it is now the 11th month of the 40th year, and y'all are about to go in, so let me write this down for you and stuff. And so there's just this overlap that happens, but Numbers is kind of a longer history. I think it was probably written maybe in the last few years of the wilderness wandering, whereas Leviticus was written first, then Genesis, Exodus, and then Numbers, and then now we'll eventually get into the book of Deuteronomy, which was written right there at the end, and is kind of a counterpoint to Leviticus. Leviticus was the laws when they were first given. Deuteronomy is the laws to the people right before Moses passes away. And so that's where we are. Chapter 33 is a summary of this journey. And to preface this chapter, I looked, and I've still done, I'm not entirely certain where the map would go. I have a lot of doubts that what we call the Sinai Peninsula, that little triangle, and typically Mount Sinai is kind of down there at the bottom. I have a lot of doubts that that is the wilderness where they wandered. I am more confident in believing that the Israelites crossed the far side of the Red Sea, because the Red Sea splits into two places, and that they went from Goshen to crossing what we call the Sinai Peninsula to the far side of the Red Sea to get into Saudi Arabia, and that's where their wandering took place. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I do know that when I read the archaeology type stuff that deals with biblical evidences and apologetics on the matter, almost without fail, the people who argue for the Sinai Peninsula are people who attempt to explain away miracles. They are people who try to cast doubt on some of the details of the Bible. If you look at the book of Numbers at the very beginning, the estimation, the actual stated number is over 600,000 fighting men. And so, and that's only from 20 to however old they are to fight. So it doesn't include the very old, doesn't include the very young, doesn't include the Levites. And So the estimate is somewhere between 1 and 2 million, and closer to 2 million people, while the scholars that say that we're in the Sinai Peninsula and that it can't possibly be in Saudi Arabia are also saying, well, the Israelites were probably closer to 20,000 people. And that makes no sense whatsoever, and it basically says that the book of Numbers is a lie, that those numbers are at best exaggerated. And so when I look at that, the resources, and understand that when I look at research like that, when I'm dealing with apologetics, I'm digging into what is more along the lines of scientific evidences. Number one, I'm always very hesitant to do that. I'm not very good with geography, just going to say that right up front. And I'm always very skeptical of anything that I read that isn't inspired. And so while I believe the absolute truth of what we have here in the recorded pages, matching that up with physical locations on a map is difficult for me. And so I don't have a map to present to you one way or the other. If I were to pull up the traditional map of their wandering, it's just a bunch of dots on the map, but I don't have any evidence in the Sinai Peninsula or outside of it of these specific locations. And so even though I've been looking for a while, knowing this chapter is coming up, I still haven't come down on anything. And so at best what I can do is I can give you what information I have. You'll have to make up your own mind. In the overarching idea of the Bible and the biblical narrative, I don't think it matters as much. I think if God really had wanted us to follow a physical visual map, he would have included that in the pages of the inspired writings here. I think it was important that the Israelites knew, and I think that what we're reading here is important to be understood by the Israelites. They knew, but what we read here is only support for the purpose of the Israelites as we look back from the New Testament. To understand that they came out of Egypt and they journeyed in a wilderness area where it was sparsely populated. They struggled to find resources to feed all of these people. The important parts of it that would matter to us, that would make the case of biblical truth and the strength of the biblical narrative, we have enough information. We have all that we need to understand that the Bible is true and to understand what we need to understand from the Old Testament. The Israelites had what they needed, and we've seen here, dealing with the city of Zoar, there are things that are pointed to that the Israelites knew about, that when they read the text, they would have been like, oh yeah, and those of us reading it today are like, what are you talking about? And I think that goes to the point of it's more important that the Israelites understood as these events were happening and all the way up through their purpose of bringing Messiah into the world. Once he did that and fulfilled the Old Testament, it was not important anymore for us to match up every dot on the map. I hope that I'm being clear about that. So I'm going to go through these. I'm going to botch the names horribly, but I'm going to do my best. I'll make a few points as I think that they need to be made, but understand that this is just a recounting of their journeys out of Egypt to Jericho, essentially, is what we're talking about here. And it's kind of long. And it is important to read. It's not something that we want to blow off. It's definitely part of inspired scripture. So I'm not trying to skip over it or summarize it or try to be, this is one of those things you just kind of read through. No, it's very important for us to read through it because it's inspired scripture. But as far as connecting what's written textually for us to a visual map, that's what I'm saying I don't believe is as necessary. It's great for apologetics. I hope to continue to dig into this and come down on some hard evidence about what actually these places are on a map. But I'm just not there yet. And the great thing about that is that it shows me that I still have room to grow in my understanding of Scripture. And I like that. I like that there are plenty of places for me to read and say, I don't understand that, and I need to dig more into that. And that excites me. So I thought I'd share that with you before we got started here in what is going to be a very long video, I'm pretty sure, in terms of the reading, because we're going to do both chapters together tonight. So stick with me and let's get started. Numbers chapter 33 and verse 1. These are the journeyings of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of Jehovah. So there it is, the inspired nature of what he is writing. These are something God said, Moses, write these down. And these are their journeyings according to their goings out. So understand, we have two sets of written things here. Number one, we have the tablets of stone that had the list of laws. And those laws are partly recorded in Exodus, partly recorded in Leviticus, partly recorded in Deuteronomy. And they are what the Israelites would have understood to be the official law. Remember, they were handwritten by God at first. Moses breaks those when he goes back up into the mountain. He's up there for 40 days. He's not just etching out 10 commandments. He's etching out over 600. And he's sitting there knocking those out on these tablets. So there's not a lot of this surrounding context that we read in what we call the books of Moses. So those laws are precise, line by line laws. Do this, do this, do this. Very precise. And that was the actual law. Then you have the writings of the Old Testament that we call the Book of Moses that contain those laws. Otherwise we wouldn't know what they were. That they contain those laws, but they also contain surrounding context. So when we read of these things, when we read Genesis through Deuteronomy, when the Israelites made copies of these, meticulous copies of these, that the scribes did by hand over and over and over and over again, and brought us the 39 books of the Old Testament into the 1st century AD and beyond, so that we know what the Old Testament said. That extra context was required by God, that Moses wrote. This isn't Moses hammering out on tablets of stone. This is Moses writing on parchment as they are journeying. And within those writings is contained the law. And it's just I don't think it's a big distinction, but it's important to understand the context of the way that the Israelites would have viewed the stone law, and the way that the prophets talk about the law written in stone versus the writings of Moses as they're journeying through the wilderness. Because those are two totally different things. And if you don't understand the distinction, some of the things that the prophets say about the law of Moses aren't going to make sense. And I hope that's clear. So anyway, Moses is recording their journeying here. Obviously, this part of the book of Numbers is not the law, because we're not talking about laws here. We're just Moses recording, hey, this was our journeys. So they departed from Ramses. Now understand, Ramses is a place. It is not the Pharaoh that was in power at the time. There's a lot of confusion about that. When you read or when you watch like the Prince of Egypt, Ramses and Moses grow up together. They consider each other brothers and whatever. Ramses is the place in Goshen that they leave from. We don't know the name of the Pharaoh from the scriptures that the Israelites were running from. Now, you can put together historical references and you can go back in time, and once you get all of the pharaohs synced up and the Hebrew timeline and all of that synced up, there's a pretty good bet. And I think I already talked about this back in Exodus when we were there. But it wasn't Ramses. Ramses was a place. It was a place that already existed. It could have been the name of a pharaoh earlier on, but it is not the name of a pharaoh. So they departed out from Ramses in the first month, and the 15th day of the first month. Remember Passover, and then the 15th day, boom, they're hauling on out of there. On the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So it's almost like a parade, except the Egyptians are upset. They're mourning the loss of their firstborn, and they're basically seeing them off. Good riddance. For the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which Jehovah had smitten among them. Upon their gods also Jehovah executed judgment. See, now there is the biblical evidence that when we looked at the plagues, that it wasn't just these random plagues that God had executed upon the Egyptians, but he had executed judgment on their gods. That's what the plagues represented, is God showing that, hey, these fake false gods that you made out of mud or wood or whatever, they have no power whatsoever, and I am the one true and living God, and I have the power to completely overthrow these fake false gods. They're nothing. And so there's the biblical backing for the presentation we did when we talked about the plagues in early Exodus. And the children of Israel removed from Ramses and pitched in Succoth, and they departed from Succoth and pitched in Etham, which is in the edge of the wilderness. So again, this idea of Etham and the edge of the wilderness, I believe this is where they crossed the Red Sea and are now in Saudi Arabia. That's what I believe. That's my opinion. I cannot provide right now archaeological or contextual evidence one way or the other. So that's just where I'm at right now. So they removed from Etham and turned again unto Pihahiroth, which is before Baal-zephon, and they pitched before Migdol. And they departed from before Pihahiroth and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness. Okay, so that's Succoth, Etham, Pihahiroth, Baal-zephon, Migdol. This is just in a short amount of time. And then they passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness and went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and pitched in Marah. All right, so and we read about this. This is all in Exodus. This is all right there. Pharaoh's chasing them and the chariots and all that. So this is right when they cross over. I believe that this all right here is them crossing what is commonly referred to as the Sinai Peninsula to the far side of the Red Sea, and then they crossed that into Etham and pitched in Marah, and now they're in Saudi Arabia. That's just what I believe. I don't know where these pinpoints would be on a map. And if we looked at the Sinai Peninsula version, I don't know where they would be. I know that there's some common maps out there that you can find and do your own research. As I find out, I may either come back and redo these chapters just to make sure they're more updated, or I might write about them on Swordmaster, or I may just do my own independent video. Hey guys, I found out some stuff. Remember when I did Numbers 33, and just kind of addendum this video. So they removed from Marah and come to Elam, and in Elam were 12 fountains of water and 70 palm trees, and they pitched there. Don't know if you remember doing that back when we were in Exodus, but they talked about that. And they removed from Elam and encamped by the Red Sea, so they're on the far side of the Red Sea. and they removed from the Red Sea and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. And that was talked about for a while. And Sin here is not what we think of as sin, but the wilderness of Sin is related to Sinai, and it's just what the place was called. They took the journey out of the wilderness of Sin and camped in Dophkah. They parted from Dophkah and encamped in Alish, and they removed from Alish and encamped in Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. That's where they whined and complained, and God told Moses, strike the rock. So he strikes the rock, water pours out. They parted from Rephidim and pitched in the wilderness of Sinai, and they were there. Remember, they were around Sinai for a year. And that's where Moses, there's the golden calf. That was where Moses did all the stone tablets and stuff, so they were there. And then they removed from Sinai and pitched in Kibroth Hattaavah. Sure. And they departed from Kibroth Hattaavah and encamped in Hazeroth. It's not Hazeroth for those of you who play World of Warcraft. It's Hazeroth. Pretty sure that's where they got the name from. Nothing new under the sun, right? And they departed from Hazeroth and pitched in Rithmah. And they departed from Rithmah and pitched in Rimmon Perez. And they departed from Rimmon Perez and pitched in Libnah. And they removed from Libnah and pitched in Rissa. And they journeyed from Rissa and pitched in Kehelathah. And remember, the cloud, every time they were supposed to camp somewhere, the cloud would go hover there. Remember, this cloud is Jesus himself, is pre-incarnate Jesus, God the Son, goes to a place and hovers there and says, all right, this is where the tabernacle is going to be. They set up the tabernacle right there, and then the cloud is in the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies. And they stayed there. If it was a day, it was a day. If it was a month, it was a month. But all of this, so far, this moving, is them, and you can see all of the places that they move, is before, or is part of the 40 years of wandering. Because when we get down to the end of these names, Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor at the commandment of the Lord and died there. He does that at the end. So this doesn't just cover, Sinai here, they were there for a year. But after this, they are in the wilderness. And remember, earlier in Numbers, we kind of skipped the 40 years. There isn't really anything said. All it is getting up and moving. Planting down camp, getting up and moving. So they could have stayed in some of these places a year. They could have stayed in some of these places a day. It just doesn't say. Okay? And they went from Kehelathah and pitched in Mount Shepher. And they moved from Mount Shepher and encamped in Harada. And they removed from Harada and pitched in Makaloth. And they removed from Makaloth and encamped in Tahath. And they departed from Tahath and pitched in Terah. They removed from Terah and pitched in Mithkah. And they went from Mithkah and pitched in Hashmonah. And they departed from Hashmonah and encamped in Mazareth. And they departed from Mazareth and pitched in Bene Jaakan. And they removed from Bene Jaakan and encamped in Horhagidgad. That's fun to say, Horhagidgad. And they went from Horhagidgad and pitched in Jotbethah. And they removed from Jotbethah and encamped in Ebrona. They departed from Ebrona and encamped in Ezion-Geber. And they removed from Ezion-Geber and pitched in the wilderness of Zin, which is Kadesh. So remember, Kadesh Barnea is, if you think about the spies and stuff, they went to Kadesh Barnea a long time ago and sent the spies, and then they circle around in the wilderness. Well, now they come back to Kadesh, and then they removed from Kadesh and pitched in Mount Hor in the edge of the land of Edom. Remember, they had the Edomites. They went in, hey, can we travel through your land? We'll just stay on the highway, and if we inadvertently eat some of your stuff, we'll pay for it, but just let us pass through your land. The Edomites said no. Edom is they didn't go to war, but Edom is the descendants of Esau. But they're at Mount Hor, and that's where Aaron dies. So we are at the end of the 40 years of wandering all through this. This is just where they were during those 40 years, because we kind of skipped over it except for the part where Korah had his little rebellion. That's about the only thing we mentioned up to this point about those years of wandering. Now we get a little bit of that filled in with all these places that they just kind of wandered around through. So verse 38, and Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor at the commandment of Jehovah and died there in the 40th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the first day of the 5th month. Okay, so remember, 1 year at Sinai, and now we're in the 40th year. So they've got 1 year of wandering left. Aaron doesn't make it to the end of the 40 years. Just like everybody else that was cursed, Aaron dies in the wilderness. Because the only people that weren't, or that were 20 years and older that got to stay, of the men, were Joshua and Caleb. Moses doesn't even make it. Joshua and Caleb are the only ones that are over 20 that make it to the promised land, into the promised land. Everybody else dies in the wilderness, and a whole new generation comes up. Okay? So then the first day of the 5th month of the 40th year, they got to get to year 41 to finish out their 40 years of wandering, and then the very next year is when they can begin their conquest of Canaan. Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor, and King Arad the Canaanite, which dwelt in the south in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the children of Israel. Okay, so we already read about that. And then they remember there was a fight that took place there, and they departed out of Hor and pitched in Zalmonah, and they departed from Zalmonah and pitched in Punon, and they departed from Punon and pitched in Oboth. So this is that last year. They're wandering around still. They've got 1 year of wandering to finish out their curse. And so they're kind of skirting around Edom, and they're dealing with Moab, and they're dealing with Midian, and that's all of what's going on here. Is this last year is what we're talking about now. And they departed from Oboth and pitched in Ijebarim in the border of Moab. Right? Remember, they're dealing with Balaam and the Midianite women and the Moabite women and all of that. And they departed from Iam. I guess that's an I. Yeah. Ijebarim, checking out my font here. Iam, and pitched in Dibon Gad, and they removed from Dibon Gad and encamped in Almond Iblathaim. Almond Iblathaim. That's a fun one. Whew. Sounds like the name of a dragon in fantasy or something like that. But they removed from Almond Iblathaim and pitched to the mountains of Abarim before Nebo, and these names should ring familiar to you because we just got finished talking about them in these last few chapters. And they departed from the mountains of Abarim and pitched in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. So here they are. They plop down and they're getting ready to go in, and Reuben and Gad come and say, hey, we like this land out here. Can we have this land? We'll be at the front of the army. Our children and women will stay here, but we're going to go fight for everybody until everybody has their own things. And Moses is like, okay. Remember, he got mad at first, but he was okay with it. And so they pitched by Jordan from Beth Jesimoth and even unto Abel Shittim in the plains of Moab. All right, so that's their summary of their journeys for the 40 years that they were in the wilderness, plus the one before they started where they were by Sinai. And so Jehovah speaks unto Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying, they wrote all that summary down, and now God has more for him. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you are passed over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their pictures, destroy all their molten images, and quite pluck down all their high places. So this is the general command from God on what they're supposed to do. And the Canaanites already know that the Israelites are blessed by God and have already had successes. When Israel is listening to God, Israel can go fight a nation and not lose a man. So already these Canaanite people are going to hear that the Israelites are coming, and a lot of the people who are already there are going to be fleeing. And so when we get specific commands to nations, basically God is giving specific commands relating to whoever is left. most of that is going to be the fighting men. Because there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, God just goes in and commits genocide. No, the primary thing is to drive them out. Remember, these are wicked nations. The adults are wicked people. And it may be that they see that this nation coming in serves Jehovah God. They see their success, and maybe those who are driven out will look back and repent. That's the hope. We don't really read much about what happens to them, but understand that this is the general context. And then when we get into specifics where God says go in and wipe out everybody that's there, remember, a lot of these people have already fled. So we're not seeing much in the way of the women and children being killed, so much as we're seeing the fighting men who were left behind. Okay? And you shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell therein. So dispossess them is it's kind of like you sink something in water and the water rises up and spills out. That's what they're doing. They're going in and they're causing the others to go out. And dwell therein, for I have given you the land to possess it. God has the authority to do that. He made everything. If you don't like that, take that up with God. But he's the creator and he has his reasons. He's trying to save all of mankind. The bigger picture here is bringing Messiah into the world and helping us to understand who he is. So that's the big picture. If you're going to focus in on the details and be upset that warfare happens, then that's something you got to take up with God. But you don't have a standard by which to judge him, so you're not going to do well in doing that. And you shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land. Well, I already read that. Verse 54. And you shall divide the land by lot for an inheritance among your families. Now that idea of dividing by lot, it isn't random. It's more when you say casting lots, like when we talk about the apostles, when they were choosing who was going to replace Judas, and the lot fell to Matthias. This is kind of like a vote. They're going to do this kind of a voting. We don't know the specifics of the process. There was probably a little bit of negotiation going on. There was, we saw what happened with Reuben and Dan and half of Manasseh. We saw what happened with Zelophehad and his daughters. So there's all kinds of factors that are going in here. But the command is God says, you shall divide the land by a lot for an inheritance among your families. Now listen to this. To the more you shall give the more inheritance. So if a tribe is bigger, like Judah, they're going to get more land because there's more of them. That's the way God commanded that it be divided up. And if it's a little tiny tribe, then they get a small amount of land. Again, because that's the way God said. And remember, based on populations, if you're already a big tribe, your population is going to continue to be bigger than the rest. Except for Levi, who gets no land at all, except for some cities that they have houses to dwell in. So you should give more, and to the more you shall give the more inheritance, to the fewer you shall give the less inheritance, and every man's inheritance shall be in the place where his lot falls, according to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. Now individually, everybody got what everybody got. Nobody was going to be shortchanged, nobody's going to be left out, everybody was going to be provided for because this is Jehovah God providing. It's just that some tribes were bigger and some were smaller. God is a God of Israel, and he is taking care of the nation. It would be like arguing it's unfair that Texas has so much land and Delaware is so tiny. That doesn't even make any sense. That's just the way things fell out when the states, the particular states, were being formed. Delaware just didn't happen to be very big. And nobody's complaining that Texas should give some of its land to Delaware. Same thing here with the Israelites. Nobody is complaining. Everybody gets more than enough land to raise their cattle and their families and do all the things that they are going to do. It's a blessing that they're getting all of this. but it just so happens that some tribes are bigger than others. Okay? All right, verse 55. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants. Now, this is important. These last two verses are super important because this is actually what happens. If you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those which you let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein you dwell. Okay, so God says, drive them all out. But if you don't, well, that's conditional. Did the Israelites have the command to drive everybody out? Yes. Is that the will of God that they drive everybody out? Yes. Does God say, but if you don't, emptily? Is God saying something that's vain because he commands it, he wills that they drive everybody out, and it doesn't mean anything to say, but if you don't? Well, no, God doesn't ever do anything without purpose. God has given the Israelites free will. He says, this is my command, I am your king, essentially. You go do this, this is my order. But if you exercise your free will and you fail to do what I've told you to do, then this is what's going to happen. They are going to be a pain in your backside. Moreover, now listen to this, moreover, it shall come to pass that I shall do unto you as I thought to do unto them. Now, what did God say that he was going to do to Israel, that he was going to do to the nations in the land of Canaan by Israel? He was going to drive them out of the land. He was going to completely remove them from the promised land. If they failed to do what God said that they should do and drive everybody out, not only would those nations be a thorn in their side, but God was going to punish Israel by driving them out of the land. And that's exactly what happens. Exactly what happens. They do not drive everybody out. Some of the nations, they turn into like vassal states or whatever, and those states come back and corrupt them, and Israel eventually gets removed by Assyria, and later on the Jews are wiped out by the Romans, and they lose that land completely. And it's right here in black and white. God says, you don't do what I say, then I'm going to do to you what I had thought to do to them. Free will, wrapped up right here in these last few verses of the chapter. Eschatology, wrapped up right here in these last few verses of the chapter. There's a lot of meat, and so no reason for us to skip this chapter. It's as important to read this chapter as it is any other, because it gives us an understanding of what God has promised to Israel. If you obey me, this will happen. If you don't obey me, this will happen. And that's important. So that's chapter 33. Going to continue on. 34 is fairly short, but it's the giving of lots to the leaders to say, okay, this is the leader of this tribe, this is the leader of that tribe, and who gets to distribute all the land and stuff like that. So chapter 34, verse 1, and Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, command the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan with the coast thereof. So now he's going to describe it. He's going to explain where this is. Then your south quarter shall be from the wilderness of Zin, along by the coast of Edom, and your south border shall be the outmost coast of the Salt Sea eastward. Okay, that's the Dead Sea. The Salt Sea is the Dead Sea. Okay? That's the Mediterranean. So that's their southern border is the wilderness of Zin along the coast of Edom, and their southern border to be the outmost coast of the Salt Sea eastward. Your border shall turn from the south to the ascent of Akrabim, and pass on to Zin, and the going forth thereof shall be from the south of Kadesh Barnea, and shall go. So they're going to encompass that area where the spies were sent out and everything, and shall go on to Hazar Radar. That's fun, and pass on to Asmon. And the border shall fetch a compass from Asmon unto the river of Egypt. This is not the Nile. This is not even close to the Nile. There is a river that, and this is one of the reasons why, going back to chapter 33, why I think that the Sinai Peninsula is not part of where they're wandering is. So I'm not just making this up, and I'm drawing this from Scripture. The river of Egypt is the border of Egyptian land, and so where the river of Egypt is, there's a river on the south part of Israel. In fact, let's pull up a map here just to show you where this river of Egypt is. Let's do the Bible. Let's see if we can find it. Let's see, and I want to do River of Egypt because I want to show you where this River of Egypt is. This is super important here. There we go. All right, so here's the Promised Land, and this River of Egypt. This is not the Nile. The Nile is this river right here. Okay, Israel does not go all the way over to the Nile, but this river is the river that connects the Mediterranean to the far side of the Red Sea. Well, when we look at the border of, let's see, let's pull up the map. I don't want to do that because that's getting into purchases. Let's do this. This is a pretty one. All right, so let us open this up in a new tab here. And of course it's really tiny, that's useless. So let's find a different one. I'm trying to find the whole thing here. All right, this will be a good black and white one here. Yeah, this is a good one. All right. So you can see here the river of Egypt, the wilderness of Zin, Edom, Moabites, right? These guys are not part of the Promised Land. Reuben and Gad and Manasseh, here's the Jordan River. This was supposed to be the Promised Land, but Reuben and Gad are like, no, we like this land. And then Bashan appears where Og was. So half of Manasseh gets here, and Manasseh gets here. Judah gets here, Simeon gets here, and you can see this is the river of Egypt. This is the border of their land. Well, this is the Sinai Peninsula down here, and it's part of Egypt. The river of Egypt is the border of the land of Egypt, and they came out of Egypt to wander in the wilderness. So from what I'm reading from Scripture, and I'm only going off of Scripture here. That's my primary source of authority. Nothing else matters in terms of authority. So if the children of Israel were to have land that goes to the river of Egypt, and the river of Egypt is on the northeast border of the Sinai Peninsula, then the Sinai Peninsula is still part of Egypt. All of that's still part of Egypt. And so the chariots chase them all the way across what we call the Sinai Peninsula, and they go across the Red Sea on the far side. And that's just what makes sense to me. That's why I've said these things about it. And the other part of this is why this is important. There are people who think that the river of Egypt is the Nile. And I don't know why they think that, because that gets halfway into, like we're crossing well into the border of Egypt to get to that. And so they say, well, God never kept his promise, or hasn't kept his promise yet to Israel, because Israel has never owned all the land across to the Nile. And so that's where they get all this millennialism from, and we're going to see Israel restored, and they go back to 1938, and you see what we call the Israelis today, and there's all these land disputes and everything like that, and they're going to set up they're going to build a third temple there, where there's a Muslim mosque at the moment, and Jesus is going to come back and he's going to rule there in Jerusalem. And there's all kinds of problems that come with the millennialist idea that create contradictions with Scripture. And part of it is because they don't understand this idea of the river of Egypt is not the Nile. The river of Egypt is, and I forget what they call this river that connects, let's see here. Well, you know what? Let's just do it. And we're going to go to Israel with Google Maps. How fun is that? Go modern technology. And let's see here. So this right here, I don't even know what this is. So there's the Gaza Strip, and this isn't even useful. But anyway, you can see right here, this is the border. This is supposed to be the border. This isn't where they came from. Goshen is up here. They would not even had to cross the Suez area, and the Suez Canal didn't exist or whatever. So they would have crossed here, gone down, and crossed right here, which is where I believe that happened. And then they're out here wandering in the wilderness. Again, I don't have any evidence for this, but let's see if we can. How much can we zoom in here? Well, it may be that the river dried up at this point in time. Guess I should have looked beforehand. Now it looks like there's a highway and a borderland, but this is what they've and given some of the there's Kadesh Barnea, but you can see Egypt, Israel. This is their borders. So, but I want to of Egypt. I know that I should have prepared a little bit better on this. No, that's not what I wanted to do. But this is important. This is why I want to do this, is because it's important to understand what the river of Egypt is. Let's see what let's get this here. And the problem is we're going to end up getting a lot of millennialist type stuff here. So there's the Euphrates, the big Euphrates River going up, and we know that one. So Wadi El Arish is the name of that river. And so, see, you have the millennialists will say, hey, it's the Nile. And so that's where Israel's supposed to have their border. And here's another millennialist one. It's supposed to go to the Nile, and that's not the case. That's not what they were calling the Euphrates River. It was this Wadi Al Arish, the river here, that I guess dried up and isn't in modern whatever. Now, seeing this, you're like, okay, whatever. You're just making this up because you can't find the river physically. I believe that it dried up. But here's the real point. When we get into the book of Joshua and into the book of Judges or whatever, but at the end of the book of Joshua, God basically says, I've accomplished everything that I was going to accomplish. I've given you the promised land, you've conquered it, bam, it's yours. And so God declares that he has fulfilled the promise. And when we get there, I'll make another big deal of it. But Israel never controlled the Sinai Peninsula. They did never control all the way to the Nile. But God declared, I have given you what I promised to give you. And so for people to come back later and say that God didn't fulfill his promise is to call God a liar. And what that means is that we have to understand the river of Egypt was something different than the Nile. And I believe it was whatever that highway was, most likely built in the dried up riverbed that goes along that way. Again, one of those things that I need to learn more about. The geography is not my strong suit. It never has been. For I guess the first 30 years of my life, it was boring to me. and I didn't understand its importance. And it wasn't until I turned about 30 and I saw where history and geography started to match up and became important that I started to get into it. But by that time, these things are not what I was focused on studying. I wasn't focused on studying the Old Testament. I was in the New Testament and into the books of prophecy and stuff like that. So, but understand there's a logical progression of the statements that the Bible has made up to this point that show that the river of Egypt is not the Nile, that the way that the Bible presents the river of Egypt and it presents the movements of the Israelites, that they should have crossed the far side of the Red Sea into Saudi Arabia. And that's just what I'm highlighting here, is this distinction and whatnot. And as we come to more of it, I'm going to point out more things. Again, I can't give you maps and stuff like that because I'm not there yet. But I can give you what the Bible actually says and what makes sense to me. And I do know that God declares, I gave you everything I said I was going to give you. Okay, so he gave them unto the river Egypt. So, and the goings out of it shall be at the sea. So this river goes, wherever it goes, it comes out at the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And as for the western border, you shall have even the great sea for the border. That's the Mediterranean. And this shall be your western border. And this shall be your north border. From the great sea you shall point out for you Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, in other words, you're going to climb up where Aaron died, and you're going to see a point that is the northern border, unto the entrance of Hamath, and the goings forth of the border shall be to Zedad, and the border shall go unto Ziphron, and the goings out of it shall be at Hazarenan. This shall be your north border, and you shall point out your east border from Hazarenan to Shephem, and the coast shall go down from Shephem to Riblah. So the coast is the edge of their borders, and we're also dealing with the Euphrates River, because that's part of their border. Is their north eastern border is the Euphrates, and the coast shall go down from Shephem to Riblah to the east side of Ain, and the border shall descend and shall reach unto the side of the sea of Chinnereth eastward, and the border shall go down to Jordan, and the goings out of it shall be at the Salt Sea. This shall be your land with the coast thereof round about. Okay, so they give us this border that goes along the river of Egypt, up along the Mediterranean, up into the north by the Euphrates, and then compasses Bashan, which is where Manasseh is, Gad and Reuben, and then cuts back over to Jericho and the Salt Sea. This idea of the Salt Sea is the Dead Sea, and then back to the river of Egypt. And that's the land that God gives them. Says this is, and remember, this is God talking. This is God saying, this is what I promised you. And then later on, at the end of Joshua, he says, I've given you all that I promised you. God keeps his promises. And anybody that says that God didn't do that is calling God a liar. All right. So Moses commands the children of Israel, saying, this is the land which you shall inherit by lot, which Jehovah has commanded to give unto the 9 tribes and to the half tribes. So remember, you're going to get Reuben and Gad on the outside and half of Manasseh, and then the 9 tribes are going to be on this side, because they're not counting Reuben and Gad and half of Manasseh to the half tribe of Manasseh, half of Manasseh, even though Manasseh is already a half tribe of Joseph. For the tribe of the children of Reuben, according to the house of their fathers, and the tribe of the children of Gad, according to the house of their fathers, have received their inheritance, and half the tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance. So that's all that eastern edge there, on the far side of Jordan, on the far side of Galilee, on the far side of the Dead Sea and all that. The 2 tribes and the half tribe have received their inheritance on this side of Jordan near Jericho, eastward toward the sun rising. Everybody else, you're on the far side. You're on the other side of Jordan. That's where we're going. And Jehovah spoke unto Moses, saying, these are the names of the men which shall divide the land unto you, Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun. So those guys are in charge. You've got your shepherd, not king. Joshua's not a king, but he's kind of a shepherd, and Eleazar, which is the high priest. And you shall take 1 prince of every tribe to divide the land by inheritance. So they were going to be involved. It was important that each of the tribes be involved. This isn't just Joshua dictating or Moses dictating how this was all going to fall out. They were involved in the process, and it was through this lots that they were going to do this voting process, whatever that looked like. And the names of the men are these: of the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh; remember, Judah is the line of Jesus, not Joshua. Judah is the line, Joshua is not of the line of Judah. Caleb is. Caleb is the main spy that spoke out and said, hey, we can take it, we can do it. And Joshua supported him, and Joshua was Moses' right-hand man. So Joshua has an important role, but Joshua is not actually in the lineage of Christ. And so, of the tribe of Judah, Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and of the tribe of the children of Simeon, Shemuel the son of Ammihud, and of the tribe of Benjamin, Elidad the son of Chislon, or Kislon probably, because they pronounce their CH with a K sound. And the prince of the tribe of the children of Dan, Buki the son of Jogli. These guys sound like hobbits. And the prince of the children of Joseph, for the tribe of the children of Manasseh, because remember Joseph has essentially two half-tribes, Manasseh, Haniel the son of Ephod. And the prince of the tribe of the children of Ephraim, which is the other half-tribe of Joseph, Kemuel the son of Shiphthan. And the prince of the tribe of the children of Zebulun, Elizaphan the son of Parnak. And the prince of the tribe of the children of Issachar, Paltiel the son of Azan. The prince of the tribe of the children of Asher, Ahihud the son of Shelomi. And the prince of the tribe of the children of Naphtali, Pedahel the son of Ammihud. These are they whom the Lord commanded to divide the inheritance under the children of Israel in the land of Canaan. Notice Joshua was not in this list of princes because Joshua is being given the mantle of being shepherd. And so these are the princes that represent the individual tribes. Joshua is no longer, he's not part of that because he's replacing Moses as the shepherd once Moses dies. So these are they whom Jehovah commanded. Jehovah is setting them up over the tribes, not the people, not anybody else. They're not voting. There's not an election. God says these people will be the ones in charge. He's hand-selecting them. It's interesting to note that God hand-selects 12 apostles. And there's kind of a reflection going on here. I don't know if it's the exact any type here, but I do know that God does things in patterns because he's a logically minded being. God selects out the people who are in authority over these 12 tribes, and then God the Son selects out whom are going to be those 12 apostles, and then later on Paul. And so I just found that cool there that these people individually are being selected out by God personally. So these are they whom Jehovah commanded to divide the inheritance unto the children of Israel in the land of Canaan. So that's Numbers 33 and 34. We are done with that. Let's see, what's my time here? Right at an hour. So that wasn't too bad. And I'm going to try to get 35 and 36 done sometime. Don't know when, in the next 24 hours. But tomorrow night is Christmas Eve, and I've got some wrapping to do. Not the kind that Will Smith does, but the kind that Santa does. So I don't know when I'll get these in. I'm going to try. If not, I do have a whole other week where I am going to be traveling to Texas, and I might try to get these out while I'm in Texas. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making it this far with me. Thank you for making it through these videos here where I am showing where I need to grow, because that definitely exists. I certainly don't know everything, but it's always fun to know the places. Hey, this is where I got work to do. So if you like these videos, subscribe, share them, hit the notification bell, leave comments. I love discussing. Maybe you know more about geography than I do and you have some evidence one way or the other. I would love to talk about these things where I need to grow, and if you have information that I can learn from, I surely appreciate that as well. Anyway, you guys have a great night, and we'll see you next time.